Hello, this is the Growth League podcast. My name is Caleb Clark, and my mission for this show is pretty simple. It's to learn from marketers on how they're playing the great game of marketing leadership. Their ideas, experiences, perspective, wins and losses, and the playbook that they've established over time. Listen, there's more than one way to lead a marketing team and a marketing function. So if you're a VP, a CMO, director, or someone aspiring to fill one of these marketing leadership roles in the future, tune in to learn from some of the best in the business.
It's interesting because I feel like I've had a lot of success with like the actual results and impact, but there's still kind of that lag of still learning how to be a functioning human adult in the workplace and navigating my 20s. So it feels fast and slow, but you know.
I am here with my guest, Zaria Parvez, the Senior Global Social Media Manager for Duolingo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I had a chance to watch your session, very inspirational, very cool. I'm sure it's been a wild ride for you. Tell me a little bit about your journey from school to, your in your career now, and what brought you to where you are now.
Yeah, I think a big part of it was I had a lot of different marketing experience, and I first studied marketing in school, so it's kind of a natural progression. Yeah. But after interning and kind of just seeing what agencies are about, I figured I was more of a person that liked to focus on one thing and go really deep into it versus having like different brand accounts and kind of just lightly touching all of them. Yeah. So I knew I wanted to be brand side. And then Duolingo in particular, I wanted to be at a place that was like inherently diverse. Yep. And it was really cool to like see the DNA of a company be run by like two immigrants and how that kind of comes to be. And I think what's even cooler is that Duolingo itself used to be like a PhD project, and now it's a huge company. So it's a very like innovative, scrappy place that like values like testing and learning and curiosity, almost in a way that you're told to think about things in school. Right. And I feel like that wonder and awe kind of like stays throughout in the DNA of the company.
So you were immediately attracted and enthralled by the what they're trying to get done.
Exactly.
Their purpose.
Yeah.
You made a strategic decision, and you ideated something that turned into something quite amazing. Tell us about the mascot.
Yeah. My alter ego is a big green owl.
Okay.
But yeah, we have a mascot who is lovingly known as Duo, and Duo like existed as a mascot even before I was there. But he was mainly used for like HR events and stuff like that. And essentially we knew that TikTok was starting to blow up a little bit more and more people were using it. And I remember there was actually a point where like TikTok announced that they had like 1 billion monthly active users. And that was kind of a ding in my head where I'm like, if they're on that app, they're not on our app. Right. So how do we bring like the meme culture of Duolingo that kind of already existed in the world, but make it relevant to Gen Z and bring it to life with video content?
That's amazing. And so the ding went off in your head. And what were some of the immediate next steps in terms of turning this idea into reality?
I think it honestly was actually creating the content. I feel like we get hung up a lot in thinking, we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough XYZ, we don't have enough this, and then we just stop ourselves. But like every single piece of Duolingo content on our TikTok page has been filmed on an iPhone. Right. Like it's very like, it's our phones, we whip it out, we all have the app, we think of different ideas and just create. And I think that was like the big moment where we realized that we actually don't need all these things that we think are needed for a big production, where you can actually make just as viral content that might even do better than a big ad campaign in the blink of an eye.
Because it's believable, it's tangible.
Exactly.
You can relate to it.
Yeah, 100%.
So, in your relatively young career so far, you've been thrust very quickly into a leadership role.
Yeah.
So, our job as marketers is, of course, to perform the function, but also to lead people and lead a team. So tell me about your experience so far and what's been your approach.
Yeah, it's really funny because there will be people who have been in the industry for like upwards of like 10 years even at Duolingo, and then all of a sudden they're going to like this newbie being like, so what do you think about this? Right. And I think it's been a process. I actually don't think I really used much of my voice in the beginning, and I always joke around that I prefer to be in a corner just creating, and I'm like, I don't really care about impact, like I just want to create it, like everyone else do their own thing, but obviously like more and more people are going to get curious. Yeah. And I really think my approach to it has been more of like servant leadership, if that makes sense, where it's like, I can tell you 10,000 things what would work, but if you don't want to do it, you're not going to do it. Yeah. So leading from the back, figuring out like what exactly makes people tick and what will get them excited about doing what I'm saying and kind of evangelize them to do it.
Right.
It's almost like using marketing skills on your marketers.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, that's exactly what I try to do. So yeah.
So much of it is outward facing marketing, but a big part of the role is creating belief and everyone rowing in the same boat internally, and that takes marketing activity and communication. So obviously very successful very early on. Tell me about some of the inner fears you have in your current role and things that kind of keep you up at night.
I think my biggest fear is video content not being king anymore, because I think that's what I grew up with in this industry and that's what I know. And also I have a fear that I won't be adaptable when I'm older. Like I really want to be someone who's like willing to go with the flow, figuring out and always be having an ever evolving mind, because I think it's really easy to just get stuck into what I know. And I'm like, well, video content's worked, and like, you know, like getting on that high horse if it's always going to work. But the reality is things are going to come and things will change. And I think that's my biggest fear is, will I be adaptable enough to be an early adopter to the next new thing?
Totally. Why is the Duolingo brand so strong right now, and why do you believe it has staying power?
Yeah. I mean, the soft answer is like Duo's just so cute.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's like that image is just so like prominent, like the greenness of it and just like the cute face of it. But I think even beyond that, we've really built our strategy to make Duo almost feel like we built our strategy to make Duo a reflection of how a user would use social media.
Right.
And it's really interesting seeing Duo become a creator himself. And like some of the awesome things we've been able to do is we have this thing called Creator Day, where the brief is we bring these creators in, and the brief is give us all the ideas that other brands rejected, and we'll make them come to life.
Yeah.
And it's something as simple as that makes other people who see it, they're like, yeah, they get it. Right. And I think our approach is like we've nailed that with Gen Z. Like our next big thing is like with millennials and older millennials. How do we make them also feel like, yeah, Duo actually gets it too from our perspective?
Right.
And I think that is kind of the key to our success
Totally.
and continued success.
How do you balance the reality that you are responsible for a critical function right now and team members, but at the same time you're acquiring critical experience that you can only acquire over time?
Yeah.
So how do you balance the two?
It's definitely an uphill battle. I think there's a lot of moments where, and I honestly rely on my role manager a lot for this, but moments where I have to be like, hey, I'm only 25, like, I don't know how to do this. And I think being able to like take a step back and let people around me know that I'm actually still pretty new at this and figuring it out has been very helpful. Yeah. I have this thing that I call my board of advisors, and they're just people that I really respect and have as mentors, but these are kind of mentors that I know I can't tangibly get anything from, in the sense that like they don't have a job that I want or anything like that. Right. The only thing they can actually give me is advice. Right. And I use that as kind of my litmus test and like my sounding board for moments that are tough. Like this was the first summer I was a role manager, so that was like a whole thing in its own of like, okay, I know how to create good work. How do I inspire other people to create good work? And that's a work in progress.
That's amazing. How do you facilitate integration of what you and your team are doing throughout other departments and stakeholders within the organization? Because it's not just a scenario where you can do it by yourself, and you want more than understanding from other stakeholders, but co-creation and buy-in. How do you? Yeah,
I think what's special about Duolingo culture, in particular, everyone we have, I think the first thing is we hire for culture ads versus a culture fit. So someone is always kind of bringing in their own new taste and new flavor to things. But everyone's also very mission driven. Right. So our mission at Duolingo is to make education accessible. Like that is something we all really believe in, and it manifests in different ways. And I think by having everyone with this like common mantra makes it very easy for them to recognize that, all right, if Zaria is making education accessible through this TikTok stuff, then maybe it's important to like learn about it and figure out how we can use that same success to garner more views on something else or get more users in a different country. And I don't think it like started off right off the bat. It's not like everyone was like invested, but when you see success for something, then you're like, how do I jump on that bandwagon?
Because you would have direct attribution infrastructure between the TikTok and Instagram communities and downloads, right? And
exactly.
So what are your guys' critical KPIs that sort of define if you're going in the right direction or not?
Yeah, so our dream for every video is to hit virality, as a lot of people's is. But we define virality by over 1 million views in organic views. Okay. So that's kind of our main, like, okay, how many viral videos did we get this quarter? And then we apply impression goals to different things. So that's kind of how we judge how good our content's doing.
Yeah. And you can measure it all the way through to conversion?
Yeah, so we have this thing called the How Did You Hear About Us survey, and TikTok's actually a box you can tick. And we've seen when we've had viral videos or viral comments, we'll actually see like a tangible uptick in users.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's cool.
Great job. Besides the data and the metrics that define if you're doing it right or doing it wrong, is there anything that you've been able to rely on whereby, you know, when you're driving home from work, you can pretty accurately determine, did I do a good job today or not? What do you rely on for that?
Yeah, I think what matters most to me with how I determine if I've become an iconic brand is actually how people around us talk about it and talk about Duolingo in general. A lot of people who are applying to Duo will be like, yeah, I'm applying because of the TikTok. So like, you know, like qualitative moments like that. Or if someone like shares like a Duolingo TikTok in their group chat and like another employee is like, oh, my kid's really interested in my job all of a sudden. Yeah. And I think it's those anecdotes that you can't quantify, but you're like, yeah, this is iconic. This is something people recognize, and there's like staying power of this.
Wow. So how long now has it been for you at Duolingo?
Yeah, I started June of 2020, so a little over 3 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, it feels, time flies.
Did it fly by?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the pandemic years are their own, you know, monster to deal with. But it's crazy because I still sometimes feel like I'm just out of college, but I'm like, well, it's been a couple years now, but it's interesting because I feel like I've had a lot of success with like the actual results and impact, but there's still kind of that lag of still learning how to be a functioning human adult in the workplace and navigating my 20s. Yeah. So it feels fast and slow, but you know.
Do you have to, I hate to bring this up, but do you have to deal with that every once in a while where age gets called into question on you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't even know if it's like, I feel like it's rather just a personal, like other biases than actual intentionally doing it. But like, yeah, one of my pet peeves is like if I'm social on a project, a lot of people like loop in my boss as well. And she's like, I mean, she's really great about this. She's like, Zaria's in charge. Like, I don't know. Like, you need to like go back to it. And I think there's also, with the nature of what I've done, I would actually say 60% of it was like luck and good timing. And then the 40% was like using that opportunity to like make it happen. Yeah. And I'm very adamant about this. And a lot of people are like, no, I don't know about it. I'm like, no, like it's genuinely like right place, right time does make a difference. But sometimes combating that with like, no, I actually also have a skill set. Yeah. It's not all just luck, but yeah, that's kind of where I grapple in between.
Good for you. Can you point to anything in your sort of early high school and early college days that laid the foundation for this crazy drive and ability to see opportunity and then act on it?
Yeah, I think so. I'm very big about talking about like my intersectional identity, and like I grew up in one of the whitest cities in America, and I am like a Pakistani Muslim girl, and a lot of times people don't really see the connection. Like, how does that connect to like content that you create? And I feel like it actually is like literally the foundation of it, mainly because my entire life I feel like I've been shape-shifting to like get along with different people and relate and to communicate and figure out like, all right, you don't know this part of my identity. How do I make it tangible for you to understand? Right. And that mentality has kind of stayed with me throughout my entire life. So it makes creating content a little bit easier because it's easier for me to get in the shoes of someone else because I've just had to inherently do that my entire life. And I think that is really like what has set me up to be successful and to take advantage of the opportunity I did have.
That's amazing. Was it difficult for you or fairly easy to transition from content creating for the purpose of just creating content and being creative, but then understanding that it needs to fit within a business framework? And there's other factors. There's bureaucracy, maybe not as much at Duolingo, but like were you able to keep the essence of building creative content?
Yeah, it was very difficult for me. I think mainly because when you're just a creative and you're creating content, you don't have a pressure of like doing things. You kind of just are in your own bubble. But then obviously if you give a mouse a cookie, the new expectation was like, all right, it's viral, make this apply across the board for all the different campaigns. And I think that was a transition I went through last year particularly, was like, all right, we have these campaigns. how do I bring the skill set I bring forward to push those campaigns forward? And I think this summer is a perfect example of that. We just heard from Barbie, and they were doing all these huge things. And there's actually like a very, very small Duolingo mention in the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
When was that?
So the dad is like doing his Spanish lesson, and the ding. That's it. It's not even like our brand. And our whole thing was, how do we optimize that? And we actually, with our strategy of Duo being a creator himself, we actually got him to be invited to go to the premiere. And we made all these funny TikToks around it. And that was the first time where I'm like, okay, I'm like creating content and it's attached to a campaign and it's leading business results and it's going across teams. But I think the only way to do that is just to actually learn and go through it. And that was like the first moment I think where I saw like, this is like a whole like loop now that we've closed.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
We all know what got you here won't get you there. What do you believe is required for you and the evolution of you to kind of go into these next stages of team leadership and function leadership? What do you know for sure you need to evolve into?
I think for me, what I'm personally working on right now is like how to inspire others to come on this journey with me. And I say that as, I always say I'm like an extroverted introvert. Like I prefer to create on my own, do my own thing. And it's like, no, if something's successful, people want to be a part of it. So how do you bring them along? And for me, I particularly see that as like developing the next Zarias of the world. So as I get more interns and more people that I'm hiring for, how do I give them the skill set to also be brave, take risks, be bold with what they believe in, and like really just go for it? Because I feel like we all have this idea of what we know works, but like that last push of just going for it and taking the risk is really hard to develop. So that's a skill that I'm trying to help instill in others.
That's amazing. Well, you got to keep doing what you're doing, because like I'm a girl dad, two young girls, and it is dead serious leaders like you that make me feel confident about the future.
Thank you.
Because it's we see that in our kids, and we want to be able to have something to point to.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
you got to keep doing that.
I appreciate that.
Talk to me a little bit about the quality of the leadership at Duo, specifically in that they are not influenced by bias of age and these type of things. They see talent is talent is talent. How did the leadership play a role in your...
Yeah, I'm very lucky for the leaders I have around me, especially hearing from like other junior talent and like what they've gone through. I think something that I found very exceptional is like when I first started this TikTok stuff and it started to blow up, my role manager was the first one to be like, it's not me, like it's Zaria, she's been doing it. And then our PR managers and all these people started press training me. They're like, all right, you're gonna talk to press, it's gonna be you. At the time I was like, me? Like why not like my role manager or like anyone else? And they're like, no, like you did the work, like you own it. And I think that's a very common thing across the company. Like you'll hear press interviews from people of all ages. It's really just like whatever work you put forward, you get to own it and discuss it and talk about it. And I think leadership also enabled me to like really embrace testing and learning. Like I literally didn't have any OKRs attached to what I did on TikTok. Like it started off like you do what you got to do, you experiment. See what happens. Yeah, and like they have general guidelines, but it's still like your playground, you can develop this. And I just remember our CEO saying like, we hired you to do your job, so we want your opinion. Like age, all that stuff is kind of out the door. I mean, obviously there's like biases, but in general, like everyone is hired to do what we hired them for, and there's no benefit in me telling you how to do your job. That's awesome. So yeah, it really set me up for success too. So that's what I mean by like luck and good timing. Like that's also something that's crucial to becoming viral and becoming a disruptor.
So when early on it was a test, it was experiment, OKRs weren't attached to it, but now I'm assuming OKRs are very much attached to it. So, but going back to your point, that has not influenced your ability to do what?
I think sometimes it does. I mean, I would love to say like, yeah, it's perfect. I think there becomes moments where I get kind of scared and knotted up in my tummy where like, oh my God, like I have this huge like 15 million impressions goal that I have to reach. And if I don't do it, am I good enough? Did I lose my sparkle? Did I lose my touch? And I think the way that I think about it is like all the goals and impression goals I assign or are assigned to me are stretch goals. So it's like even if I can hit 70% of that, that's okay. Mm-hmm. And I think there's also a lot of value in owning failures and like not doing as well. And I think it's becoming a space where I don't take the work so personally. And something that's really resonated with me is my dad was telling me about like workplace stuff. And he's like, in general, like 80% of people like just function. Like you can just show up to work, do your 9 to 5, do okay at your job, and like that's fine. Like not everyone is always going to be that top 20% all the time, and allowing myself to like dip and go back and forth has been very good for my mental health and my sanity, and it's also like expected. Like I can't be the top all the time. So
totally. I mean, as you go along in your career, you're gonna get your ass kicked a
yeah,
lot of times.
exactly.
So do you feel prepared for that?
Yeah, I mean, I always say I grew up with like strict immigrant parents, so I'm ready for anything the world throws at me. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely had moments, even like with Duolingo in the past couple of years, where I've like made a mistake and like got called out on it, and then all of a sudden like the whole world felt like right they're against you, and you're like, oh, what am I gonna do? And learning how to take accountability, how to backtrack it, and how to be better. And I have a special respect for social media managers because we deal with trolls all the time. But yeah, I mean, I feel as ready as I can be, and I'm sure something else is gonna come and hit me harder, and then you just grow from that.
That's amazing. What words could you share with young marketers coming out of university or whatever, maybe not even university, but coming into their first workplace environment? What would you say they ought to be intentional about over their first 90 days, say?
I would say I think to sit back and listen and learn. I feel like a lot of the times when young talent comes forward, we kind of think we're the hot shit and we know everything, and like we're young and we're hip and we know it, like you should listen to us. And there's a lot of power in like sitting back and just listening and observing like how people function together. For some context, like when I started this role, it was just me and my role manager, who was like half social media, half PR, so it wasn't even fully dedicated to social. And then eventually after this got more successful, we got like another person who's now the head of social. And I really admire how she went about it, because she came in with this like very high functioning person, and she's like, this is happening, it's going in. And she spent the first 6 months of her job honestly just learning from me and being like, Zaria, what do you do? Like, I don't want to tinker with it, I just want to learn. And then 6 months in, after she like learned, understood the people, understood the dynamics, understood like how creativity flourishes on our team, then she started like actually giving guidance. And I think the respect I had for her as a leader to just sit back for 6 months and just like not come in so hot, I think changed my whole perception of like her as a role manager and like her as a contributor and as someone who can give me feedback, and just I think it just made my respect for her grow. And so that's something I try to emulate anywhere I go. Try not to come in hot, just learn and take it easy for a second.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was going to say, what is this event? This is the first time you've been at the gathering?
Yeah.
How do you like it so far?
I mean, Banff is beautiful. Yeah. It's been really cool. And I think what I love about it is I grew up kind of with college was very agency focused. And this is the first time I've been at a conference that's like brands talking. So it's cool to be on the other side of it and like hear actually a brand's perspective on things.
What are one or two takeaways from the time here?
Ooh, that's good.
I know it's a tough one.
I know. I'm trying to think of my favorite one.
Or even the experience of having to speak yourself.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess from speaking myself, I think it's really awesome to see that people it's a very kind environment. Like people just want to learn. They're here to just like understand what's going on. But I actually really enjoyed Tim Harris's talk from the Lakers. That's his name, right? Yeah, I was like, I'm not a sports person, but just the way he was able to storytell like what true fandom is was really cool to me, because I have my phone, I'm posting on TikTok for our brand, 7 million people, but you don't really register what that looks like in the real world. Like for me, it's just in my phone, it's in my pocket, I post, I'm done. But to see your brand live in the real world and how people react to it, I think is really cool. And the Lakers have just done a really awesome job with that.
Does it feel weird sometimes to know that you have in your pocket a pretty big lever for the brand, and it could be used well, it could be used
Yeah. I mean, I feel like every social media manager stresses that I'm accidentally going to post on the brand account instead of my personal account. But yeah, I think honestly, yes and no. No, because I feel like I grew up with internet culture, so I'm just like used to it, and I've just been doing, this is all I know. But also, yeah, when you think about it, it was like 7 million people, so a frick ton of people.
That's so funny. When you kind of close your eyes and think about Duolingo over the next 5 years, what are some of the things that come into clarity for you in terms of where the brand is going and what it starts to take shape as, or continue to take shape as?
I think it's going to come as more like mini content series. I think right now we have a lot of, the way I look at it is like it's kind of like a sitcom, like our social channels, and each video is kind of an episode into that greater story of a sitcom. But how can we actually create like mini content series about each Duolingo world character that feels like something you would actually watch on TV, but is like funny and engaging and has smart writing. And I think a lot of that has actually come from like partnering with like really scrappy agencies or even stand-up comedians or just like people that you would normally not think to create ads, of how can we genuinely just create good content that could exist in this world on its own and doesn't have to be a promo for anything. It's just fun and entertaining.
Yeah. What is your approach thus far in your experience in working with agencies? What has been your playbook on getting the most out of that marriage or relationship?
Yeah. So one of my favorite agencies that we worked with is called Loop. It's out in New York, and they are just like phenomenal. And I think it's like during like the pitching process when people just get it and like they show you ideas that you're like, dang, I wish I could steal that. And I think sometimes a lot of agencies kind of get caught up in like, and it's natural, like you have so many different brands to work with, you have so many different things that you're kind of dealing with that it's hard to actually know what works well for each brand. So when an agency creates work that I want to steal, that's when I'm like, yeah, I want you.
It's a good litmus test.
Yeah, exactly.
Putting you on the spot a little bit, what would you claim to be your superpower as a marketing leader?
Ooh. I think my ability to shapeshift. I think I can get along with a lot of different people, and I'm able to be adaptable to just things and how the world is changing around me.
What do you consider a weakness?
Weakness. I feel like this is when people are like, I'm a perfectionist.
Exactly. It's not an interview.
Exactly. I feel like my weakness is definitely my lack of patience. It's funny because a lot of social media managers are very detail oriented, and I feel like I love the idea of just shipping something. And that's not always the best approach. Sometimes you need to think about it a little more than once. So I think that's my weakness of like, wait a minute, take it slow. Like, is this actually going to be as impactful or as brand safe as I think it is?
Cool. It's been a little while since I've been in university, but can you comment on your belief on how university is preparing professionals for today's world? Is it moving and evolving accordingly, or is it giving a different perspective of what the world is?
So I feel like my advertising program was very different than what I've known other people have gone into. So for context, I went to University of Oregon. For those of you who don't know, White and Kennedy's from there, like Nike's from there. It's a very like they get brand storytelling. Yeah. So a lot of the classes I took were actually around just like creating campaigns or actually knowing what an insight is, or like what's a human truth and what is a strategy, what's an actual strategy statement versus just like a claim. And having that has been way more pivotal than I think generic marketing stuff tends to be. So actually being out there and being able to create campaigns, pitch those things, get rejected has been really pivotal, I think, in the university experience, because the transition was very easy into agencies and all that.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
So you went to University of Oregon, not a sports, but you never went to a Ducks game ever?
I did. I mean, for the vibes, but I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I'll take some cute pictures, some content, you know.
That's right. What thoughts or advice do you have for content creators today, like online young content creators that are maybe building for brand or building for their own personal brand? This has been a thing now for a long time. What's your thoughts on that?
I would say just keep creating. I think constantly putting content out in the world is like what helps you get better and hone in on your craft, and constantly iterating as well. When you put a video out and it doesn't do well, look into it. Like, why is it not doing well? What are people in the comment section saying? Is there ways that you can elevate it? And if it's doing well, again, same thing, why is it doing well? And taking those tidbits can make your work only smarter and better each time. And the only way you can learn that is to keep creating.
That's awesome. Do you remember when the first video hit?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first video where like everyone was like, whoa. It was me and my friend Mark, who usually wears the Duo suit, and he's another marketing person on our other product called the DET. But anyway, he usually jumps in the suit, and we were filming this video, and I was like, hey, can you like get up on that conference table and like just do some things? And then we're filming, and we're like, what if you like twerk? And he's like, okay, like I'll do it. And we were just like dying of laughter. Like, it was so funny. The moment was so great. Like, it was such a genuine, like joyous moment, and like why I love creating content. And then we put it out in the world, and like within maybe 20 minutes, NBC was reaching out to us. All these like press people were like, what is going on at Duolingo? And I think that was like a very big turning point, where it's like we were just some small town people having fun in Pittsburgh to like, oh, this is like a cultural shift moment where people are paying attention. And that was exciting. It was scary. I never had an interview before, and it was just cool to see that come to life.
So what happened the next day at the office? The next day, I don't know if it was the actual next day, but what happened after that? Was there some conversation about we need to systemize this or get this into the normal mix? Like what?
Yeah, I mean, first off, a lot of people wanted to be in the suit all of a sudden because they're like, oh, like we could also be famous. But it also became a greater conversation of, okay, now that we have these ideas for content, how do we keep sustained virality and really think of a strategy? And I think what surprises a lot of people is like we worked backwards. It's not like we came in with this idea to go viral in this strategy. It was, again, that testing and learning and iterating and figuring out, all right, you guys posted this video of the owl twerking. Like, what about it actually made people hooked? What excited them? And that's how we kind of built this whole strategy of like Duo's going to be a creator who's going to do the same things you or I do and be a reflection of like internet culture. And then from there, we started to address it and bring it to different parts of our marketing team, from like our merch store to different teams across the world, all the way to like product, and make it a really core part of our brand.
Wow. So besides the constant dopamine hit you get when you get a video to hit your targets, why do you care about Duolingo? Like, what brings you there? What fills your cup because of the brand?
I think the biggest thing is the creative freedom mixed with like the mission. I feel light and happy making great viral content for a brand who wants to make education accessible. Like that, to me, is like number 1, 2, and 3 reason. And then being able to have that trust and freedom of like, you may see yourself as young talent. You may not believe fully in yourself, but we believe in you and we want to see where you can go. And feeling empowered, I think, is huge for a creative. And those are like, that's like the number 1, 2, and 3 thing.
That's amazing. Well, everyone, my guest, Zaria Parvez, just keep killing it. Keep being a model, keep being a leader, and keep playing this crazy game in your way.
Thank you.
And I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You bet.
Cool.